Carl Dennis's poem, The Greenhouse Effect, doesn't picture an explosive cinematic end of the world. Instead, it maps out a slow, unavoidable geographic shuffle. The gradual warming trend continues, and the global centers of power are quietly rewritten by the weather. This map highlights how the agricultural zones, the grain belts, slide closer to the poles. The equator steadily becomes too hot, pushing viable farming north and south. In the United States, cultivation is pushed completely out. The plain states are abandoned as giant, unworkable dust bowls. Meanwhile, the frozen edges of the map turn green. Greenland and Antarctica thaw, exposing massive stretches of prime real estate and elevating them into the world's new great powers. This permanent melt strips resource control away from the temperate zones. The ice breaks apart, clearing the way for new ports and vast agricultural empires in regions that used to be uninhabitable. The former superpowers, now barren, are forced to play these northern and southern giants off against each other for aid. Even with that help, the poem notes, the old empires end up much poorer than they are now. The changing climate acts as a brutal geographic equalizer. Wealth and agricultural dominance are drained from the middle latitudes and handed over to the ends of the earth. Down at the ground level, daily life looks completely different. Good tillable soil becomes incredibly expensive, making fertile land the most precious commodity available. The sprawling American suburb disappears entirely. Survival dictates that pristine front lawns are dug up, turning quiet neighborhoods into dense manual vegetable farms. Without abundant resources, personal cars become an impossible luxury. The population grows too poor to own them, forcing a reliance on walking to work or crowding onto local trolleys. Urban forestry undergoes a highly practical shift. The massive oaks and elms that used to line city streets for shade are cut down and replaced with nut trees, anything that yields calories to sustain the neighborhood. Cities quickly fill back up with people. Living miles away from your job is no longer an option when you lack the cheap fossil fuels to close the distance. The previous century of endless space and rapid transit gives way to harsh limitations. Every inch of soil must produce food, and every commute must be measured in footsteps. The greenhouse effect quietly unravels the mobility and aesthetic design of the modern era, replacing them with pure agrarian necessity. As the economy shrinks, the local tax base collapses. There isn't enough public money left to maintain the civic buildings that defined the nation's peak. Basic upkeep becomes a matter of manual civic duty. Citizens have to donate hours after their workday just to rake the lawns of the library and city hall, or tuck point the chimneys themselves. Without that constant, localized effort, Dennis warns that federal buildings will eventually fall into ruin, crumbling exactly like the temples in Rome. The indignity is quiet but complete. Sheep begin to graze in our town squares, mirroring the literal grazing that took place in the Roman Forum for 1,000 years after the empire collapsed. When the local environment fails, institutional pride cannot survive. The most robust architectural achievements simply regress into pastoral ruins. Global dominance shifts outward to new rivals. The poem imagines stronger Carthages rising up, alongside massive Korean armadas that now control the shipping lanes. Their far-flung fleets are loaded with merchandise produced far cheaper than the old empire can manage. The former citizens are left to simply sit on the beach and watch these endless patrols pass by. Let them have their little time in the sun, the narrator says. It is a phrase of resigned acceptance, acknowledging the torch has permanently passed. Slowly, the citizens find a new rhythm. They sway on the shore to the strains of a native beach band, actively ignoring the top hit songs broadcasting out of the distant Arctic. The greenhouse effect forces humanity to adapt, not through sudden heroics, but through a gradual submission to the reality of an altered planet. The empire falls, but life goes on. People lower their heads, adjust their pride, and figure out how to live in a humbler world.